Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Augusta Fisher Smallshaw, 1987, Part 2. This is the continuation of the discussion that I had with my grandmother, my grandma Smallshaw, my mother's mother. So, Mrs. Smallshaw, what do you think about this anti-communist sentiment among some Westerners? Anti-communist? Well, I don't know. Never in my life have I been too enthusiastic about politics. No, I'm not a ranting politician. Ha ha ha. But you get pretty cooked up about it, don't you? Well, a little bit, I suppose I do. I don't know. You don't follow it too closely? Well, I think politics is something that comes and goes, changing all the time. You're not very much anti-communist? No, I'm not anti-communist, no. You're not afraid of the Russians? No, why not? I don't think they want to take over the world as ranting Ronald Reagan thinks so. Isn't it true that they want the whole world to become communist? I don't know. I've never heard them say that. I don't think the world will ever be communist, never. They shouldn't have invaded Afghanistan. I think that was bad. Doesn't that show their evil intentions? No. They said they just came into Afghanistan because they wanted an opening to the sea, to the ocean. But the world will never be all communist. I think there will be a much better government than we have now, and it won't be called conservative or liberal. You have two different political parties here in the United States, haven't you? Yes, two parties. Two parties. What do you call them? Democrat and Republican. Yeah. The Republicans in Canada are like the Conservatives, and the Democrats are like the Liberals. I don't think it will be any of those. I think there will be a sort of a socialistic government all over the world, and it won't be communist, and it won't be conservative, and it won't be liberal, and it won't be democratic, and it won't be Tory. What is socialism? Socialism is anti-capitalism. Isn't capitalism the economic form which the world follows today? Right. And you don't like capitalism? No, it's cruel. Isn't it true that socialism makes the economy go bad? No, I don't think so. It's condemned by a lot of people. Haven't a lot of countries that went socialistic had their economies fail because the businessmen weren't making money, so they stopped producing and so forth. The government took over. Isn't it true that without the profit motive, people don't work? There could be something to that. I don't know. Is what you're trying to say that the government should put some limits on businesses and protect the interests of the weak, poor, and aged, and not pile up so many millions, and cut their profits and not spend so much money on military and defense? Right. You believe in the social programs. That's right. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Do you think the people on welfare should be required to work? I think everybody should have a job, everybody, some kind of job. Government-created jobs? Well, government or created by something. There's so many clever young people that are rotting away, which is bad. How do you feel about the people who are on welfare and don't work and don't look for work? Do you think they should be working? Certainly. If they're on welfare long enough, they get so that they're afraid to venture out. It takes their initiative away. Don't you think so? Would you cut them off welfare? Well, you can't cut them off welfare and they can't get a job. They would just starve. Maybe some type of government work, having them paid for some type of government service. Something like that. The politicians don't know how to handle it right now. They're doing a lot of things. They're taking them off welfare and getting them to cut bushes and things like that. Projects like that. How it will work out, I don't know. I'm not any authority on that. I hope they do something. How are the Indian population faring in Regina? Oh, the Indians are very, very bitter about the government of Canada. What type of Indians are in Regina now? The Cree, and in Alberta are the Blackfeet. Are they all Cree in Saskatchewan? I think there are others. What are they bitter about? About the way the Canadian government are treating them. They want to have their own governmental system, and they want to keep up their culture, their Indian culture. They've had them on reserves for years and years and years. Now they're letting them out of the reserves and just letting them go wholesale back into Canadian society. A lot of them don't know how to conduct themselves. They're very socialistic in their ways, and if they have something, they share it among themselves. Share it among everybody. That was the way they had to do to keep alive before Canada was taken over by England and France. What, if anything, do you feel the Canadian government could do to help the Indians escape poverty, alcoholism, unemployment, and so forth? Well, they're working on that, and they're promising them a lot of things, and they're trying to keep them from getting too bitter. But they are very bitter right now, mentally fighting, you know. Some people think the time will come when there will be an uprising. I hope it never does, because it would be awful. Do you think relations are deteriorating between whites and Indians? Yes, very much so. They're getting very, very bitter. They want their own government. They want an Indian state, a territory? Where would that be? I just wonder. A lot of them are out of work. Do you think they should be on the reservations? No, I don't think they should be on the reservations. I think they should have been absorbed many, many years ago. What were they doing on the reservations? They just get a section of land and just dump them over there. Yes, they got money from the government to live on. Would they work on the reservation? They're supposed to, but when they get their treaty money, they just spend it on booze. Still do. They can't handle their booze. They go crazy. Why do you figure so many Indians are alcoholic? Well, I suppose for many, many generations back, they've never had alcohol, and their systems are anti-alcohol. Why, we don't know, but when the white man came from Europe to Canada, they bribed the Indians with whiskey, which was a very cruel thing to do. The Indians call alcohol firewater because it sent them crazy. Very wicked. Do you think there's hope for this situation? Yes, I think it will work out. I hope so. What do you think would be required by the average Canadian citizen to improve the situation? Well, I think they should make some form of employment for them. A lot of them are very good people and they want to work, but they're training a lot of them. You said Bud had an Indian fellow working for him. Yes, I think he did. There are a lot more Indians in Canada than the United States? I don't know. George, my husband, he did an awful lot of reading, and he always said that Canada was better to the Indians than the United States. There are over 210 tribes of Indians in North America. What do you think about the situation in Central America? I don't know an awful lot about it, but what I do know sounds very drastic. What do you feel? How do you feel about the American policy? I think America should keep its big nose out of there, I really do. If you were President of the United States, what would you do? If I were President of the United States, I certainly wouldn't do what Ronald Reagan is doing. I'd leave them to themselves. That's what they want to be. Their own government, whatever it is. They seem to be happy without Ronald Reagan sticking his nose in there and sending all that money and people, sending soldiers down there to be killed. Good American boys down there being slaughtered. Ronald Reagan's silly ideas. Well, there are no American troops. Just money, is it? Well, he should keep his money out of there. Your money. I don't think it's a good idea. A lot of people in the United States don't think so either. You don't think the Nicaraguan government poses as a security threat to the United States? No, why should it be? I'm no authority. This is just my humble opinion. You're not an adherent to the domino theory that communism could spread to the other small countries, and then into Mexico, and then across the Rio Grande into Texas. Oh, be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? There is a short break in the tape here. Yes, the First World War was a terrible, terrible thing, and so many people got killed. In France, there was a ridge that was very, very important, and it was held by the Germans, and the French tried to take it and failed. An awful lot of young men got killed. Then the British went in and they tried to take this Vimy Ridge, and they failed. The Germans were entrenched there. They didn't know what to do. They felt that they had to take that ridge to defeat the Germans, really. So then they had 135,000 troops from Canada and trained them in England for a little while and took them across the English Channel and had them in the trenches. Terrible conditions of living because it rained so much and it was cold, and so many of the fellows were in the trenches for quite a long time. The trenches were deep and muddy and cold. What time of the year was this? I think it was in November, which is a very cold, rainy, damp month. Anyway, they had the Canadians in there for a few weeks or months. I don't know how long. My beloved brother was one of the Canadians that was foolish enough to join up. He went with his pal to Regina at age 16, and his pal was a young boy from England, and he'd been working on the prairies, very homesick, wanted to go back to England, and he didn't have enough money to go back. When the war broke out, he thought that was his chance to go back. His name was Percy Steptoe, and he'd be in his early 20s, and my brother was only 16, a lovely big tall boy of 16. Percy said, "Come with me, Alfred. I'm going to Regina to enlist." They both went to Regina, and then when my brother came back, he had enlisted. He lied about his age. He said he was 19. My father was so very much against people telling lies, and he said he could have gone and got him out. But he didn't want to expose him to the fact that he had told a lie about his age. So he went overseas, and my father was quite sick at the time. He had tuberculosis. He'd had pleurisy, and it turned to TB. When my brother went away, my father said, "I will never see my son again." He was his only boy, and he felt, and he never did. Then my brother, when he was in the army at 16, he was dearly loved by his mother and father, and he got very homesick. He really didn't know what he was going into. Then when they got in the army, they gave them so many shots against diseases that they might get exposed to. He chummed with a boy that did practically the same thing. They lived in Craven, about 7 miles from us. His name was Jack Ingram. He was also 16. So the two boys kind of clung together, both homesick, for both the first time away from home. They trained in a camp for a while, and then they went. They shot them off to England. They were trained for a very short time in England, and they sent them across to France. 135,000 went across to France, and these young Canadians, all ages really, they had a terrible life in the trenches. Then the time came for them to go over the top. Before that, Jack Ingram was standing beside my brother in the trenches, and they were talking. They were a great comfort to one another. One of the German snipers, I guess Jack had his head a little bit too high. The German sniper saw him. My brother was talking to him, and he turned around, and the sniper had shot Jack's head right off. Just shot his head off. Terrible shock for my brother. Terrible loss for the Ingram family in Craven. Before the boys went over the top, they issued them a little issue of rum. My brother said it wasn't much more than an egg cup, but it was to numb their senses, and they went over the top, half of them getting killed. My brother went over the top, and as an infantryman, they were loaded with guns and a lot of equipment, quite heavy, and they dashed along, and the artillery fire was supposed to attack ahead of them, sort of protect them, and sometimes the young soldiers rushed into their own fire, a lot of them dead. So anyway, they took the ridge. My brother was wounded and fell into a big crater. The big guns used to make great big holes in the no man's land, great big craters. A lot of boys fell into the craters, and these craters were half full of mud because it had rained so much, and he was in this crater all night long. They went over the top in the night time. They sent up flares so they could see where they were going. He was wounded and fell down in this crater. He also was ruptured, and then the Germans sent over a wave of mustard gas. He vomited all night long from this mustard gas and went unconscious there. When the morning came, hours and hours afterward, he was picked up by a stretcher, half dead. They didn't think that he would live, and he was still in his teens. He was sent back to England, and he was in a hospital for many, many months. They didn't know whether he would live or not. We didn't hear from him for such a long time. In the meantime, in August, my father passed away. I wrote to my brother and told him about the death of his dad. I put his regimental number on, 639107, I think it was. If you had the regimental number on it, eventually it found them, whether they were in France or England. When the letter came to him, to the bed where he was in the hospital in England, the nurse read the letter, my letter to my brother. My brother was so sick that she wouldn't dare tell him that his father had passed away, for fear that he couldn't stand the news, that he would die. So it was a long time afterwards that my brother knew that his dad had passed away. My brother came back from England to Regina. He'd been gone 3 years altogether. He was 19. He'd grown tall. He was shell-shocked from the terrible shells. He was gassed. He was wounded. He was ruptured, and he'd been shot in the knee. And he was in a hospital a long time after he got back to England. When they came back as wounded soldiers, they had them in blue, sort of a blue outfit. They were returned soldiers, and that were still recuperating. Silly, crazy war. Was he ever bitter about the war? I think he was, yes. He was a victim of circumstances like a lot of the others. Did he ever tell you about his anger about the war? For a long time we'd mention it, and he'd say, I want to try and forget it. I never will, but I want to try and forget it. Don't talk about it. He took me to a show one time. The moving picture shows at that time had a tent in front of the pictures and an orchestra. I remember I was sitting beside him, and the orchestra started up with a bang, and the poor guy jumped. I thought it was funny. I laughed because my nerves weren't as bad as his, and he said, Oh, don't laugh. It made me feel so bad. He jumped in his chair, and he just felt terrible afterwards. Nervous wreck, really. Did he tell you about the war? He tried not to, but he told us about getting the issue of rum and going over the top. They had to go. They took the Vimy Ridge. We have a wonderful writer in Canada named Pierre Burton, and he's written a book about it. It took a lot of research because it was so long ago. It was 1914 when the World War broke out, and it didn't end until about 1918. He did a lot of research. He has a very good secretary that helps him. He's written this book about Vimy Ridge, and I've read the Reader's Digest synopsis of it. The book is not on sale yet, but as soon as the book comes on sale, I'm going to buy a copy, because I feel I have a personal interest in Vimy Ridge, the taking of Vimy Ridge with my beloved brother. I'm going to buy the book and send it to my darling grandson, Peter. He's a great reader. Would you like it, Peter? Sure, I sure would. I was going to bring it with me, but it's not on sale yet. I told the man in the store I want to take it to my grandson for his birthday. He said, Well, I'm afraid you'll have to wait and send it by mail for Christmas. Ha, ha, ha. So you get it for Christmas if I'm still alive, okay? Okay. Are you planning on departing the scene? Well, after all, I'll be 90 the 24th of October, so every day is borrowed time, right? What does the Bible say? 70 years and 10, which makes 70. Well, in the Soviet Union, some people live to age 110. Oh, I'm not in the Soviet Union. I'm in Canada. Well, you're in a healthier place in Canada. You don't have to worry about the Gulag Archipelago. Well, of the 5 of us that came from England in 1903, my dad and my mother and my older sister and younger brother, I was the middle one, and I'm the only one left. God is good to me. How has your health been? Very, very good. My doctor says I'm well organized. You haven't felt any decline? Oh, yes. Oh, sure. My eyes, ears. I can't dance as well, and I can't sing at all. Has your health declined since last August? Oh, no, I've had a fairly healthy life. A very slow decline? I imagine. Well, we're glad to have you. We'd like to have you as long as the good Lord intends. Right. And we're very blessed and fortunate. I'm lucky to have you with us. Thank you, Peter. I love you. That's the truth. Good. You're a real ray of sunshine. Thank you. Are you planning on coming to Lakeside? I'm planning on it. We're seeing a lot of you. That's wonderful. It sure is. I hadn't seen you before Lakeside last year in so long. I think it had been about 4 years. I think it has. It wasn't my fault, was it? Huh? I enjoyed Lakeside. No, it wasn't your fault, you living so far away and me being in Kansas. That's right. So I'm glad we're getting to see you, because over the years, living so far away, we haven't. I was here for Lakeside last fall. When is Lakeside this year? Same time in August. Are you going to be there, Peter? Well, I was thinking I would only be there for part of the time. I didn't want to take off work for a whole week. I probably could take off, but I don't know if that would be good. You feel like you're not settled there too long? Right, and I like my routine, you know. I don't know if I'm ready for a vacation. I like the weekend and even the 3-day weekend, but last year I took off the whole month of August. I thought I would go for Saturday and Sunday and take Monday and Tuesday off work and come back Tuesday night. Note, this is referring to 1987. Sure, I think that's a good idea. I got fed up with it after a while last year because it was too much vacation. I missed my friends around here at my AA meetings that I chum with, that helped me so much. I think you have some very nice chums, very nice pals. The interview ended here. Now we have one comment from my father, John S. Ray. Gus Smallshaw's lively, liberal spirit really comes through in your interview with her. She says she's really not much into politics, but she is, and in a very refreshing way. I believe that Saskatchewan has been a liberal stronghold for a long time, and it is because of strong-thinking people like Gus. She is like a breath of fresh air blowing across the prairie. John S. Ray, Cleveland, Ohio. Well, that concludes today's presentation, Augusta Fisher Smallshaw, 1987, Part 2. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck to you with your efforts in family history if this interests you, finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, and photographs, and interviewing elderly relatives while they're alive. God bless you, take care, and I'll see you next time.